Most members of this House will be aware that the welfare system can be a nightmare to navigate and does indeed need reform. But could we have less of this rhetoric about his £5 billion package of disability benefit so-called reform being moral? There is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. This is not about morality. This is about the Treasury's wish to balance the country's books on the back of the most vulnerable and poor people.
How insensitive and shameful Keir Starmer can be. We mean, can a Prime Minister ever, in his wildest imagination, decide to cut welfare benefits for disabled people? These are the welfare benefits that help the disabled survive and pay for their health, food and assistance they need. However, Starmer has not only done this outrageous thing, but has also defended it, saying it's purely moral. Just imagine how low he has stooped. On this, the outspoken MP, Diane Abbott, who always crushed Keir Starmer in the Parliament, spoke out. She literally crushed Starmer, saying things he had never expected that left him speechless. He struggled to find answers, but when he spoke, his words fell apart, and everyone saw how insensitive he is not only to ordinary Britons, but also the disabled ones who are most vulnerable. But what did Diane Abbott say, and how Starmer tried defending? In this video, let's know about the whole story. Keir Starmer's government has ignited a political firestorm with one of the most controversial welfare reforms in recent memory. His administration's decision to slash disability benefits, particularly personal independence payments or PIP, has been met with outrage from all corners, including Labour MPs, disability rights advocates, economic experts, and even members of the public who had once placed their faith in his leadership. The proposal, framed under the guise of reform, is nothing short of a calculated attack on the most vulnerable in society. With over 1 million disabled people set to be affected and £5 billion in cuts, this policy does not just reduce financial support, it fundamentally redefines who deserves help, and in doing so, exposes a cold, technocratic indifference to human suffering.
Millions of people who could work, trapped on benefits, denied the income, hope, dignity and self-respect that we know good work brings. And taxpayers paying millions more on the costs of failure. Today we take decisive action, and I commend this statement to the House.
The goal, to shave £5 billion from the welfare bill by 2030, but in a concession to those sitting behind her, plans to also freeze disability payments dropped, still not good enough for
Diane Abbott, one of the Labour Party's most seasoned politicians, savaged Starmer's decision in Prime Minister's questions, calling it out for what it is, a betrayal of the most vulnerable members of society. She dismantled the government's justification that these cuts were about morality, rejecting the rhetoric that portrayed welfare reduction as a necessary evil.
Most members of this House will be aware that the welfare system can be a nightmare to navigate and does indeed need reform. But could we have less of this rhetoric about his £5 billion package of disability benefit so-called reform being moral? There is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. This is not about morality. This is about the Treasury's wish to balance the country's books on the back of the most vulnerable and poor people in this.
When she said, there is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. She unequivocally exposed the government's attempt to dress up economic cruelty as a moral virtue. The reality, she pointed out, is that these cuts are not about helping people to work, but rather about balancing the government's books on the backs of the poor. This is not reform. This is austerity in disguise. At the heart of the controversy is the government's plan to tighten eligibility for PIP, a benefit designed to help those with long-term disabilities and illnesses cover the extra costs of daily living. Currently, PIP supports individuals who struggle with mobility, self-care and independent living. But under the new changes, a large percentage of these recipients will lose their benefits altogether. On this, MPs are extremely angry.
For some.
My friends, my family are very angry about this, and they do not think this is the kind of action that a Labour government takes.
There are alternative, more compassionate ways to balance the books rather than on the back of sick and disabled people.
There are decisions made in this House that stay with you for the rest of your life. This is one of them. Trying to find up to £5 billion worth of cuts by manipulating, by changing the PIP rules, the criteria, will result in immense suffering, and we've seen it in the past.
When they made the decision, to go down this route, did they understand the pain and difficulty that this will cause millions of people, millions of our constituents who are using food banks, who are using social supermarkets, people who are on the brink? This £5 billion cut is going to impact them more than I think her department is giving credit for. And I would like her department to be able to look my constituents in the eye when I go back to them to tell them that this is going to...
The government insists that this is about getting more people into work, yet there is no clear pathway to meaningful employment for disabled individuals. The job market is already hostile to those with disabilities, and many of the roles available for low-skilled workers do not accommodate chronic health conditions, fluctuating illnesses, or the accessibility needs of disabled individuals. A particularly cruel aspect of these cuts is the reclassification of who qualifies for disability benefits. The government plans to narrow the definition of disability, meaning that individuals suffering from mental health conditions, autism, hearing impairments, and mobility issues may no longer be considered disabled enough to warrant financial assistance. This move completely disregards medical research and expert recommendations, instead treating disabilities as inconveniences rather than life-altering conditions. The consequences will be catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands of people who depend on PIP to afford accessible housing, transportation, and medical care will be left without support.
Yolanda Barker has multiple sclerosis that's progressively weakening her muscles and requires 30 pills a day to manage. She would love to work, but has to rely on personal independence payments and universal credit, and is terrified the government might make it even harder to qualify for those.
It worries me to the core, to be perfectly honest. I think that we're being demonised the whole time. Each time it's cut, but it's cutting from the people that really need it. And we need to look after people and to help them back into work if they can work, but if they can't, let's give them a better...
Even those who manage to retain their benefits will be hit with another devastating change: the removal of automatic inflation adjustments. Inflation disproportionately impacts disabled individuals who already face higher living costs due to expensive medical equipment, specialist transportation, and home modifications. By freezing PIP payments, the government has found a way to quietly erode the financial stability of disabled people without officially announcing further cuts. Over time, even those who still qualify will find their support becoming increasingly inadequate, forcing them into greater levels of financial hardship. However, in response to all this, Starmer defended what he did.
Mr. Speaker, she's an passionate advocate and has been for a long time on this issue, and I pay tribute to that. But as she rightly acknowledges, the current system is broken. And this is where I disagree with her. I think 1 in 8 young people not in employment, training or education, that's 1 million young people I think that's a moral issue, Mr. Speaker, because all the evidence suggests that someone in that situation at that stage of their life is going to find it incredibly difficult ever to get out of that level of dependency. That cuts across the opportunity and aspiration that's the root of my values and Labour values about how we take working people forward. So I do see it as a moral issue. I'm not going to turn away from that. I am genuinely shocked that 1 million people, young people, are in that position, and I'm not prepared to shrug my shoulders. Mr. Speaker, I've lived with the impact of disability in our family through my mother and brother all my life. I do understand the human impact of this, but the current system is morally and economically indefensible, and we're right to reform it, and nobody should be defending the broken status quo. We are proceeding on 3 principles: that if you can work, you should work. If you need help into work, the state should help you, not hinder you. And if you can never work, you must be supported and protected. They are the right principles, but we can't leave the current system as...
Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive videos on the groundbreaking changes happening in British politics. Let's continue now. Even Pensions Minister Liz Kendall tried defending the action using twisted logic. However, in doing so, she revealed the government could come for more.
Spending on working age, disability and sickness benefits will still rise over the Parliament, but we will be making savings by getting more people into work and by focusing those benefits on
So 5 billion of savings you've identified now, are you saying that there will be billions more savings from the welfare bill in this Parliament?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is a major package of reforms.
But you're not ruling out more savings.
And I would suggest we talk about the proposals we are actually making, not those that we had.
Did you want to go further though, Liz Kendall?
No, I
did want to freeze PIP, didn't you?
I have never started from a sort of macho, tough position. I've never done politics like that.
You seem quite cross.
I am. You know I am cross. Because I've seen in my own constituency people written off to a life that is not the life they have.
When Starmer was categorically asked whether disabled people would be given a concession, he declined, shocking everyone.
The Prime Minister has rightly spoken about the need to get more people into work, and he repeated that now, so people have more dignity, we can get the economy going, and we can cut the benefits bill after the disgraceful legacy left by the Conservatives. But does the Prime Minister recognise that for many disabled people, the best way to help them into work is to support them properly with more special equipment, with training, with better healthcare and so on? And will he also today calm anxieties that he himself has raised for many of us, that the disability benefits for people who simply cannot work will not be cut?
Mr. Speaker, we will, of course, as I've just said, the principles, we will, of course, support those who need support, but also help those who can work into work. They'll be the guiding principles. But what we've inherited is shocking, and they ought to be silent. 1 in 8 young people not in education, work or training. That is a lost generation. That is their inheritance. They've got plenty to say now. They did nothing for 14 years and left this in terror.
This policy shift has been met with fierce resistance from within the Labour Party itself. Labour MPs and high-profile figures have openly rebelled against Starmer, condemning his decision as a fundamental betrayal of Labour's core principles. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, has been one of the most outspoken critics, warning that these cuts will push disabled people further into poverty and homelessness. Even Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner, both members of Starmer's cabinet, have reportedly expressed deep frustration and anger over the scale of the planned reductions. Labour backbenchers are refusing to support the cuts, with some MPs describing them as morally indefensible. Beyond Labour, the public backlash has been ferocious. Disability charities, including Scope, have described the policy as deeply damaging, warning that it will plunge disabled individuals into extreme poverty. Economic think tanks, such as the Resolution Foundation, have pointed out that 70% of the cuts will disproportionately impact families in the lowest income bracket. Perhaps the most glaring hypocrisy in all of this is that Starmer claims these cuts are necessary because welfare spending is out of control. Yet he has categorically refused to introduce a wealth tax on Britain's richest individuals. A modest 2% wealth tax on those with assets exceeding £10 million would generate an estimated £24 billion per year, 4 times the amount being cut from disability benefits. However, instead of taxing the ultra-wealthy, Starmer has chosen to balance the government's books by stripping financial support from disabled people. This is not about fiscal responsibility. It is about ideology that prioritizes corporate interests and fiscal optics over human lives. The government has attempted to sell these cuts as a right-to-try initiative, arguing that disabled people will now be able to attempt work without losing their benefits immediately. But this argument falls apart when there are no guarantees of accessible, stable employment for those with disabilities. However, the Labour pension minister continues to say that the government will take care of the disabled.
This government is ambitious for our people and our country, and we believe that unleashing the talents of the British people is the key to our future success. But the social security system we inherited from the Conservatives is failing the very people it is supposed to help and holding our country back. Our Pathways to Work Green Paper sets out decisive action to fix the broken benefits system, creating a more proactive, pro-work system for those who can work, and so we protect it for those who cannot work now and for the long term. Under this government, the social security system will always be there for people in genuine need. That is a principle we will never compromise on. But disabled people and people with health conditions who can work should have the same rights, choices and chances to work as everybody else. This is a significant reform package that is expected to save over £5 billion in 2020.
The job market is already discriminatory, with employers reluctant to accommodate workers who may need flexible hours, work-from-home options, or special workplace adjustments. By forcing disabled individuals into an employment landscape that is not designed for them, the government is setting them up for failure, not opportunity. The scale of the political damage is now impossible to ignore. Starmer's administration miscalculated at every step. This is no longer just a controversial policy, this is a defining political crisis. Starmer now faces a critical choice: double down on this disastrous decision, further alienating his party and the public, or acknowledge his mistake and abandon the cuts. The next round of elections, both local and parliamentary, will reveal the true extent of the political damage. If the current backlash is any indication, this could very well be the beginning of the end of Keir Starmer's leadership. What is Starmer trying to do by cutting welfare benefits that can impact over 1 million disabled people in Britain? Isn't it true that it's the worst example showing how insensitive Starmer is? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on why Starmer doesn't put mild taxes on the wealthy instead of punishing the most vulnerable of the society. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get more updates on British politics and how events are changing it. Until the next video, stay tuned.